But here to talk to us this afternoon is T.S. Narayana from Tech Mahindra. He is the Senior Vice President of Global Solutions, and he's going to be talking to us about the particular SI challenges of enterprise accounts. Please join me in welcoming T.S. Narayana.
Good afternoon. Can you see me instead of hear me? The reason I asked this question is eighth speaker of the day, immediately after lunch, by a guy who can barely be visible above the podium and has a name that can't tell you which is the first name or the last name. It doesn't get better than that, does it? Thank you. Thank you, Susan. That was very contextual in the context of what I was going to talk about. I work for a company called Tech Mahindra. Tech Mahindra is a global systems integrator. It's a part of the Mahindra Group, which is one of the largest business houses in India. The two biggest companies that are relevant to this discussion, Tech Mahindra is a telecom-only systems integrator, and Mahindra Satyam is an enterprise-only systems integrator. And as we speak, we are going through a process of merging these two big companies. And that is by way of context. I'm responsible for business development and solutions in this part of the world. Like Susan said, in the last few years, telcos have seen a huge importance to the way they deal with their enterprise sector. There's lots of discussions going on the retail or consumer sector about falling ARPUs, revenues, so on and so forth. At the same time, telcos see big opportunities with their enterprise customers. And this beast of the enterprise sector is fraught with a lot of challenges on the business side, on a number of dimensions that you see on the slide. And that is what we are going to talk about, and how that translates to IT challenges, to SI challenges. And a lot of what we're going to talk this afternoon is something that we are not prescribing or mandating, is just what we have seen. And the first slide is about some of the key dimensions of the enterprise business. One is the differentiated customer dynamics. Someone talked about customer segmentation. And then if you look at how telcos organize their enterprise business, there are a number of factors that come into play. Telcos tend to organize by sector. It's retail, the BFSI banking, manufacturing, logistics, pharma, government, healthcare, so on and so forth. That's one way of cutting it. Another way is by geography, because customers have different, telcos would say, hey, the way I would treat the EMEA region customers would be different to the Americas, to the Europe, and the rest of the world. By size and tier, I've seen telcos that categorize their enterprise customers by tier. Multiple tiers, obviously based on revenue sizes of their businesses, so on and so forth. What does that mean? It means the kind of requirements that you get from these differentiated segments are very, very different. On the one hand, this is a very different segment to the retail or the consumer business. And on the other hand, even within the enterprise space, because of all these categorizations and segments, the nature of the business is very, very different, even amongst these sectors, sizes, geographies, and so on and so forth. And therefore, when a telco executes contracts with these enterprises, the one word which is very much used in this part of the world, is bespoke contracts. I guess the American equivalent would be custom contracts. But somehow the word bespoke is etched in my mind because I've lived in this geography for the last 6 years. So you would find the requirements of a banking customer that may say, hey, I want to connect all my ATMs, have a certain degree of security, a certain degree of resilience and backup and response times to connect all the ATMs or branch offices, which may be very different to what a much smaller size customer in a different sector might be. And how do you abstract all of this in providing an IT solution in the way the telco manages the contracts is something that's very, very important. The next big challenge is the underlying product offerings that the telco sells to the enterprise. And that range, as we will see, is becoming quite large. You have services from the traditional PST and lease line to VoIP, to unified communications, to hosted unified communications, to Ethernet, and now even M2M solutions. I know there's a discussion later during the day. So the breadth of technology, product, and the level of change that the industry, the telco industry, needs to deal with is quite significant. And that factor imposes a huge set of challenges on the underlying IT infrastructure and how do you make it all work together. Thirdly, the enterprise sector is again a big amalgamation of an ecosystem that has a number of players. You have a supplier ecosystem, an external supplier ecosystem, because if a telco doesn't work in a certain geography or a country, the telco would need to buy access locally, would need to order CPEs, would need direct and indirect channel partners. And there's a whole ecosystem around how you manage the supplier ecosystem from an IT perspective. And another key dimension is the geographical diversity. In dealing with different countries, what specific requirements within the same enterprise arise as a result of a specific geography. Taxation laws that have an impact on billing, local language requirements, SLA requirements, follow the sun, so on and so forth. And both on the telco side and on the side of the enterprise customer, the additional complexity is that this ecosystem on both sides has grown as a result of mergers and acquisitions. And as a result, how the enterprise deals with the telco from one geography can be very different. And this is the fourth of the challenges, or the key challenges, that is what we're going to discuss today. The net result is there's a huge degree of complexity, and with complexity comes cost. And how do we bring in solutions that address all of these through the bubbles you see at the bottom? The right way to engage with customers. How do you abstract the custom nature or the bespoke nature of contracts? How do you challenge the market with a flexible portfolio of products in the context of changing technology, and so on and so forth? And how do you manage the supply chain and the service desk? So what is really required is an abstraction of the complexity. If I had to take all the challenges away and summarize them into one statement, how do I take away the very bespoke nature of the contract engagements the telco has with the enterprise the one line is how to take away the complexity. And if you look to the two boxes on the bottom, in a way summarizes how we deal with it. You need an IT infrastructure that will help you, A, manage a very set of key business processes from a telco business perspective. For example, how do you deal with third-party contracts? Because you're going to buy access CPEs in different geographies. How do you actually deal with the contract administration of those contracts? In terms of saying, hey, when are contractual obligations to be met by a supplier or by the telco? So there is the left-hand box which says, I need an IT ecosystem that can deal with all of that and provide IT solutions that can deal with that in as effective a manner as possible, and at the same time deal with how do I combine that with the standard IT processes or the business process of saying, how do I order, fulfill, and manage an underlying base product set that the telco has for the enterprise segment. So it's almost like a consumption model, and there's many ways of putting those two boxes. You could actually say, I could put one on top of the other. Another big difference with the retail industry is when you do, let's say, migrations, a telco transitions a legacy network to an IP network, traditional DSL broadband to ADSL, VDSL, FTTX. The migration from the consumer market is pretty simple. But if you have an enterprise customer that has 5,000 PSTN connections or even 100 connections, 200 MPLS circuits, and there's a network-driven upgrade, managing even a single contract requires a lot of project management and administration, which you wouldn't find in the consumer space. How do you build the tools that will help you do all of that? Which is where you find these two boxes. One that deals with the external ecosystem, and the other that consumes an internal product stack. And our experience with the industry is, yes, we've seen lots of models. Telcos build their own product stack and then put an overlay on top of that and say, hey, this is how I would deal with the complexity. What is important is how to build reusable components in that green box, which abstracts all the complexity that we've just said. So one potential solution is to have an integrated contract management platform. It's almost like an SDK platform which says, hey, if I have to go and manage a contract or manage a migration, like I just said, I actually run it like a product, like a project, have the IT tools to be able to do that with the underlying ordering, inventory, billing, so on and so forth. So you need, yes, you could come and say, at the end of it, it's just about ordering, inventory, and billing. But then if you say, I need an ordering system that can order MPLS, that can order VoIP, that can order a single PSTN line, and that can say, hey, go off and create 1,000 different sites for this big enterprise. Managing that degree of complexity is what we believe the integrated contract management platform is, in a way, expected to do. Easier said than done. And there's different ways of experimenting and implementing. Someone talked about customer experience, multi-channel engagement. And if you look at this slide, again, the question might be, hey, what's so different? Even today, in the retail industry, you could actually use an iPhone, iPad, go and check the status of your orders and all of that. But again, the enterprise segment is a little different. Because you look at a telco, the ecosystem is again the end customers from the enterprise, how they interact with the telco in various geographies. your own sales force and the channel partners, direct and indirect partners, because all of them need to be covered by the customer engagement model. Yes, you do need solutions that are always on. You need mobile-based applications. You need analytics at a click. I've seen examples of a telco. So SLA monitoring. Enterprise customer wants to see how the network, the managed network is performing that they bought from the telco. So one telco says, hey, I just want a simple vanilla monitoring that says, if I hit 90% of my utilization, fine, send me an alarm. And another telco says, I'd like an SLA plan that shows me 10 slabs. 70 to 75% utilization, 75 to 80, 80 to 90, so on and so forth, and different sets of actions, notifications to be done. And I need all of that analytics at a click so I can know how the capacity of the network that the enterprise bought from the telco is being used. And how do you build these solutions? Either from a portal perspective, from a reporting perspective, from a billing and reconciliation perspective. B2B. So we talked about M&A, we talked about multiple geographies. So e-bonding becomes really important. So the enterprise wants to fire in a service request, a simple service request, and believe me, if you look at the volume of transactions that an enterprise transacts with the telco, the most important ITIL functionality that is ever used is request management. And a big majority of percentage of request managements are password reset requests. Right? So how do you deal with that in an automated manner? How do you reduce the cycle time? How does the telco, on the one hand, send in an automated request for a password reset as opposed to saying, hey, here is a request, but this time it's for creating a big site. Or this is a request for telling me what is happening to my network utilization or the incidents that you've seen over the last 1 year, 1 month. And doing that through a B2B interface actually is one solution for e-bonding that helps reduce cost, complexity on both sides. And this is how our experience shows that when you do that with the IT infrastructure, it really helps reduce cycle time and cost, and both sides makes the contract viable and win-win, both the enterprise and the telco. So it's all about providing world-class customer experience through these solutions and reducing the cost of operations. Talked a little bit about product dynamics. It's a well-known fact that when the Ethernet technology came into being, point-to-point, point-to-multipoint, multipoint to multipoint, the private circuit business literally crashed. So every telco that was doing a lot of wholesale business had to consciously switch to Ethernet, knowing that the cost of Ethernet was low and the margins were low, but wholesale was better than no sale. Right? A lot has been said about falling volumes of PSTN revenue and margins, and so on and so forth, and the migration to voice over IP, hosted unified communication, so on and so forth. And so on the one side, you have the huge range of product technology, network technology, so on and so forth, and the need for the enterprise to be able to create those products and create the IT for those products at a high degree of reusability and hence low cost. An additional information and an additional factor at this point in time is the way enterprises sell to the way telcos sell to an enterprise. Who do they sell to actually within the enterprise? 7 times out of 10, they sell to the department, the function, the guy that is running the networks, which is a different tower from the CIO tower. So the guy that's buying the managed network services from the telco only sees it as buying PABXs or VPNs or so on and so forth. But the time has now come for the telcos to say, I need to bundle all of this with industry vertical applications, value-added services. A great example I can name of a telco that actually created an app that would virtualize. If you went into a Tommy Hilfiger store and you say, hey, this is the suit I would like to try, an application would actually model how you looked in the suit. And this was done by the telco. It goes back to what Thomas Friedman said. When the walls break down, we are in each other's business. The point here is, with the change in technology, there is a need to add value-added services on top of the fundamental product set that a telco would have selling to the enterprises with a number of industry vertical offerings. And again, when we probably talk about the panel session, what does M2M mean to the enterprise sector? Is a huge value-added service offerings. But what is important from an IT function, from building an IT infrastructure or ecosystem or stack, is managing all the dimensions on the right. Flexible ordering and billing, controlling the complexity, leveraging shared infrastructure. Because now telcos can sell voice on an existing MPLS infrastructure. Flexible ordering and billing. If you look at the enterprise sector, how many telcos have got it right in terms of managing the complexity of what we call in the industry CPQ, quoting and pricing? Because how do you manage to quote and price for voice and MPLS and whatever else you would like to bundle? And it is well known that in the industry, if an enterprise wants an order with a telco, even to generate a quote, the earliest you could get a quote is in the order of a week or weeks. And building the integrated contract management is just therefore not about building a standard telco stack. It's about managing all of this complexity. Right? We did talk about supplier engagements, and I won't dwell upon this a great deal because a number of the experts in the billing area have spoken a lot about it, but it's fundamentally about managing ordering, inventory, and billing. Because what happens is, when a telco wins a contract with the enterprise, we would largely like to look at it at a 4-stage process. One is win the business, transition the contract from whoever is the incumbent, if it's not a greenfield contract, transform the contract, and I'll talk about that in a moment, and manage the contract in steady state. Right? So when you transition the contract, what is the telco in effect doing? They're actually inheriting the assets, the network assets, the supplier ecosystem that and the inventory that the incumbent had. How do you build in solutions to extract that inventory, transport that inventory as part of the transition to the telco's ecosystem, and then build solutions and processes for ordering future orders, for managing the reconciliation of your customer's bill, your supplier's bill, the associated inventory, and putting all of that together. And that represents the billing and the inventory challenges. Finally, we talked about this. How do you manage all of this across geographies? In an ideal world, one would say, all we need is one global enterprise stack that can deal with all geographies, all kinds of languages, all local situations, all local regulations, but the truth is far from that. Again, for a variety of reasons. You've had M&A, you had local infrastructure, you have the local czars, and you have local laws related to taxation, billing, so on and so forth, discounts, transparency, credits, so on and so forth. And more importantly, how do you manage operational excellence and customer experience? You need feet on the ground. And you can't transfer your IT infrastructure overnight. But it is a stage process where you can get there. I guess that was the last slide. And 10 seconds, like I said, Tech Mahindra is a global systems integrator, and we see ourselves playing the 3 roles you see on the slide. Manager, in terms of managing the operations of the enterprise sector, the enabler as the core IT systems integrator, and finally the advisor as a consulting firm. Happy to take on questions. I know I was pretty close to the time limit. Happy to take on any questions either now or later.
Do we have a question for TS? No? Well, he'll be with us this afternoon, and certainly we'll have an opportunity at the break. Thank you very much, TS Narayan.